Hello everybody, welcome back to a new episode of What's On from Bugle Reps. I'm Martin.
I'm John.
I'm George.
I'm Robbie. And I'm Ewan.
So this week we're here to discuss how the team got on when they went to a local event at PAW, which is the Crossroads event. So who wants to take us away from start?
What, do you want to start at the bottom and work up?
So obviously we had John take his Salamanders, George went with Dracari, Robbie went with Sisters, Ewan went with Nids, and also Paddy went with Ultramarines, and Luke went with Custodes.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's everyone who went down as Bugle.
Yeah.
Mikey can get fucked because he's top ship.
Yeah.
Well, did Mikey not go as Bugle Bat Reps?
No.
He's a traitor. He's a traitor. He's a pasty fudger.
What did he go as?
Powerhouse Damon.
Dave Laporta and a few of his other mates. This club. Yeah.
All right.
It's all right. We got King George. We're all good. So, George, do you want to run us through the event? Because you've been several times now, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it hasn't run for a couple of years because of COVID. So it's an annual tabletop convention. Basically, it's not just 40k. They do Age of Sigmar, Bolt Action, Star Wars, Song of Ice and Fire. They do all sorts there now. It's an annual convention in Plymouth, usually at the YMCA Centre, and in one arena they'll have like a bunch of tables for local vendors, and in the other arena typically it'll be set up for one or two larger tournaments, mostly the 40k one, but I know Age of Sigmar was quite big this year, and I think Star Wars, is it Legion?
Yeah.
Legion.
Was it Kings of War they were playing?
Say again?
Kings of War?
Might have been Kings of War. I don't know. Like I'm woefully naive when it comes to things not 40k related. But yeah, like it's an annual event, but it hasn't run for a couple of years because of COVID. There was a small Cross Swords event last year, but it was I think it was only 24, 26 players, and it was in the pub where they have the weekly club meeting. So that was quite quiet. It wasn't like this. This was a 40-man GT. 5 games over 2 days, 3 on the Saturday, 2 on the Sunday. We were playing the Arcs of Omen mission pack, so which was probably the first one for all of us, really. I know it was I was only like 4 games into Arcs of Omen, I think, total before the tournament. So you had all those balance updates, so it was going to be quite an interesting event. I thought it was quite a diverse meta. So. And yeah, that's basically the gist of what PAW is.
So obviously, it's 5 games over 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So people who's not here. So obviously, Paddy took Ultramarines.
He took his triple repulsor nonsense.
Triple repulsor, Paddy.
Yeah.
And what did Paddy get? It was 3 wins, 2 losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he ended up somewhere like 16th or 17th overall, I think. So
it's not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good considering his list was very much an adaptation of his 8th edition list that we used to take to when we used to go to like the Warhammer World events. He took his triple repulsors then because it was like an easy list to play. You just move your repulsors and things off the table. And sometimes you didn't have enough to remove the things before they outscored you. So. But yeah, it was quite a simple list, but Paddy enjoyed playing it, I know. And he did well. He played in some good matches. He said all his games were quite close. So I think it shows.
Apart from one of them, which we'll come across in a bit. We also had Luke take his Custodes. I think he read 2 wins, 3 losses. Was it?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But he was really happy with that for his first 2-dayer. He was quite happy with that, I think.
Yeah, no, we need to emphasise that as well, because like there's obviously Custodes a bit of a hot topic at the moment in the meta. They're sort of doing pretty well, and a lot of people think if you take Custodes to an event, you're going to do really well. And it's like, bear in mind, Luke's like quite new to particularly tournament play, and his Custodes list is not like cutting edge like top level competitive. It's just a good custodies list. So I think he did really well with his track record. I thought he played well.
So now going on to you guys who are hot here. So John, just run us through what you took.
Yeah, so I took a pretty new Sally's list. I just tried to make it really well balanced as best I could, so that it could go into hordes, or it could go into vehicles, or it could go into demons, as well as it could do, and hit as hard as it could do. And now, like Georgia said, with the Arcs of Omen detachment, it kind of has unlocked my ability to not, like a lot of Space Marine players, you don't have to take that troop tax anymore. But actually, and interestingly, like infiltrators are just, you know, they're all include. You have to take them. You put them with a Helix Gauntlet. They're in the list before the characters are in for me. Like, they're so good, and they were throughout the 5 days. They were absolutely pivotal in every win I had, because they're just, especially if you've got if you're clever with your screening, you're clever with your positioning, and when you're deploying them, when you're not, when you're aggressive with them, when you're conservative with them, you can really affect your opponent's ability to get into your core. With so much melter kind of around the back and so much flame up the front, re-rolling everything as well, it turned out to be a brutal list. And apart from my one cock up, it was bad. There's no, we'll get into that later. But, you know, when turn 2 came and I went into tactical, I was just picking up armies really, really quickly. And to me, I actually, for the first time as a player, I actually felt really bad, because it was brutal how much melter I was getting through. Just wounding on 2s, just picking everything up. So to go 4-1, I was really happy, because like compared to a lot of the guys that play, especially on the local circuit, I'm quite a newbie really. I've only been playing since the very end of 8th. So to go to a GT and do 4-1 I was really, really happy with that. Kicking myself a little bit, because I could have done probably better, but
Just give us a run through of what you gained to us.
Yeah, so I went straight into, so first game was Chaos Demons against Lee, who's actually a lovely bloke, Lee. I believe he's one of the chairs. I think George, you probably know him, don't you? He's one of the chairs. Yeah,
lovely bloke. He normally plays sisters, but he also has salamanders as well, actually.
Yeah, he said he had salamanders. He said, I don't need to go to your army, I know what they do. And I was like, okay. That was always handy. That saves a lot of time, that does.
I think
but he had
he's been playing sisters all the time, really, but I think he's recently switched to demons since their codex dropped.
Yeah. Well, he ran 2 big bloodthirsters, one with the wound cap on it, which is just brutal, and the other one had the one where it's basically like splash damage. You can't mitigate any of the wounds that come through, so it's either an invuln or you're just dead. But also that hurt quite a lot as well. And then he has Scarbrand, then a few demon troop units, bloodletters, I think they are. And then he had 2 big soul grinders at the back, which were quite interesting. I've never faced those before. They put out some damage, but they're D6 weapons, so they're quite swingy. So he would either pick up whatever he looked at, or he would do a few wounds, you know, really, really swingy. But he was rolling really hot through turn 2, and I was actually like, oh my god, I'm going to get smashed here. But I had quite a lot in reserve. I put quite a lot in reserve in my first turn, my first game. And because his bloodthirsters were basically in my deployment zone, turn 2, I basically put all my reserves on in my deployment zone. So I was 3 inches away from all of my Flamestorm aggressors. All my eradicators are all in the board. You know, they're all getting 4 damage plus D6 on each one. So I got through 1 soul grinder, 2 bloodthirsters, and half of Scarbrand turn 2 shooting. You know, it was pretty brutal, really. I mean, that's like 50-60 wounds off of T8 monsters gone. Obviously, I'd bring it down, so that did quite well. And then the game kind of went from there, really. When his wound cap bloodthirster went down, that's really when I started pushing out and taking over the board then. But I had to deal with that first. But it was a good game. It was a close game in the end. I think it finished 80 to 84 to 60 something. it was quite close because he scored really quick, quite soon.
And then you went into Custodies, I believe, with Luke.
Yeah, then I went into
You
Luke,
play every fucking week.
which was a bit gutting, really, because I mean, he was in the car on the way up. Do you know what I mean? And I was staying with him as well. It's always the way when you go to these things. I mean, the amount of times in fact, I think every competition I've been to, I've faced one of the club guys. But anyway, obviously, me and Luke played quite frequently. We went into it. He played really well. Actually, he came out the blocks. He wasn't pulling any punches, which was really nice. And we got to the end of term 3, I think, before we called it, before we got timed out. But I think we got to about 70 points. But if it had gone to term 4 and 5, I would have maxed primary, and I would have finished off my secondaries as well. So it finished quite close score wise. But like I said, we timed out after Luke, and then went straight into Paddy.
You played the week before.
Yeah, and
Same on with us.
I just looked at him and I sort of he put his we had these 2 bits of obscuring terrain either side of each other, and I combat squadded and reserved all of my eradicators and a lot of my melter, and I hid it all back, and I was just like, Paddy, I'm sorry, like, this is gonna hurt you more than it's gonna hurt me. And he basically made like this shoebox out of this terrain with all of his repulsors kind of stacked on top of each other. I was like, don't think that's legal, but it's okay, we'll carry on. He came out turn 1, did what he could. He's built his list really well for Codex Warfare. So I mean, he just, he picks up points really, really quickly when he's just killing you with heavy weapons in the Devastator Doctrine. And he's got a really cool little trick he does with one of the land speeders with a scout squad where he flies it up, moves out, does R&D, gets engaged and does stuff like that. It's pretty cool. I've not seen that before. But then turn 2, I brought my reserves in and I picked up all 3 repulsors in 1 turn of shooting. And I was just like, Paddy's face, he was still smiling, but you could tell I kind of took the soul out of him a little bit, really. It was really bad. But, I had, what did I have? 23, 24 melter shots, and I moved them right up. So I was all 2 plus D6 on each one, and the eradicators were 4 plus D6 each, wounded on 2s, 3s, sorry, wounded on 3s. It was really, really bad. And he didn't have a save because he didn't have an invuln, so they just went straight through. I think the big thing was my damage rolls. Like, I was just rolling 4s, 5s, and 6s on all my D6 rolls. So it was really bad.
He's going to hate that smug grin on your face.
I did feel for him. I really felt for him. But I mean, we played the game out. We had a good laugh. Me and Paddy always have quite good games. It's always quite free and easy, which is nice. But again, it was a bit of a shame to go into another club guy. So game 2 and 3 were 2 people I play with at home. So, yeah, you always worry about that. Then we went out Saturday night, and we'll fast forward to Sunday morning, which nearly didn't happen. And I went into Simon Corder and his Space Wolves, and looking at the list, I was like, oh right, this is going to be fine because I've got, I'm perfectly made, tailor-made to go into Wolves. Never struggled with Space Wolves before.
Oi.
well, I mean, they have armor, but they don't really have great invulns, and they want to charge, and I'm really good at Overwatch, so it kind of, you kind of feed it into my main strengths, I guess. He took no prisoners, and he took the Space Wolf one where you have to charge or be in engagement range. Warrior Pride. He took those 2. I can't remember his 3rd one now. But I was so badly crippled through alcohol that I literally just went straight at him. And if I just held back and let him come to me, I would have won that game because he took no prisoners, and I belt fed him my entire army rather than just sitting back and go, well, you can come to me then, and I'll just save up my CP and I'll just Overwatch you every time. So I kind of kicked myself a bit, really. Not taking away from Simon, he's a good lad, he's a good player, but I didn't need to lose that game, I don't think. That was a bit of a shame, really. But nonetheless, lose I did. And then I went into a really pretty tough night list, a chaos night list, actually. I think he had 13, was it 13 or 14 small nights?
Oh, yeah, I hate that list.
Oh, well, it was ridiculous. The shooting on it is ridiculous. I mean, he had 3 with auto cannons, and everything else had melters, stubbers, and then the like burst cannon type thing, like the assault cannons. And he was re-rolling a hit and a wound, so he had 2 melters, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1 hit, wounding on 2s and 3s, re-rolling. I had no armor, no invuns, so I was just picking up Gravis armor like, oh my god. But Adrax Agatone won that game because he just went in with his thunder hammer, damage 4, and just started wrecking face and went through 2-3 of them. I got an explosion, which was good, and it kind of cascaded around a little bit. But the shooting, two rounds of shooting from that night list was, I was very thin on the ground very quickly. But I managed to come out with a good win there. Got 100 in that one as well, 100 points in that one, and that capped off my my tournament, really.
So you ended up doing 4-1 and coming 4th?
Yeah, 4-1, came in 4th. Yeah. Yeah, kicking
good.
myself because I was talking to Luke about it on the way back. I was like, if we'd finished our game, I would have had another 20 odd points there. I was like, But you know what? It's all right. You take the 4-1 because there was there was quite a few people had. Mikey actually came up to me after and he's like, "Oh, you had quite good draws, didn't you?" And I was like, "Well, I think going into Paddy was probably a bit hard because like he didn't have on all his armor, he didn't have any invuns, so." That was a bit unfortunate, but otherwise, like that night list went 4-1, 3-2 in the end, I think, actually. But he was picking up Custodes and a few other bigger players. Simon won all of his games apart from his game against Manny. So
Well, that was a good thing.
yeah, so actually, you've still got to win your games, haven't you? If it looks like you're going to win on paper, everybody builds their list to win in a competition. So I don't know. I don't really. Yeah, like I say, you still got to win those games. You still got to make sure you don't make mistakes. You still got to make sure you're in the right position. You're scoring those points. You're staying focused on what you need to do and trying to mitigate damage and points from your opponent as best you can. So there's no easy game, and judging from today, I played today and got beasted by a Space Wolf list again. And I was like, oh, this is no good. So you can get a loss from anywhere. You can't take things for granted, I don't think. But yeah, really, really good tournament. I thought the layout, the hall, and everything like that was really good because you had this whole. It was like Comic-Con, really. It was amazing what they had going on display next door. So it made it quite an intrinsic thing because you had people flowing through and watching the games. It was really good. Good experience. I'm glad I went, and I would definitely go again.
Awesome. So obviously talk about scoring points and scoring high. I think that moves us on to Mr. Robbie, who scored very high in all his games.
Yeah, well, I mean, I ended up 1-4 on the weekend, but that doesn't quite tell the story of it for me because I averaged 68 and a bit points a game. And I was looking at it. So Paddy finished 3-2. He scored 13 more points than me over the weekend.
Mm.
And Dave Laporta, who finished 4-1, only scored 35 more. So although the results weren't what I'd hoped, it's definitely going the right way. I'm definitely improving. Some of that's off the back of the sisters' secondaries because leap of faith, you might as well just write 12 points down for. It is that good.
So obviously you took sisters. Give us a run through your list and what armies you came up against.
Yeah, so I took Morven Val and Saint Celestine, which seems to be. It's the one I can't quite wrap my head around because they're nearly 500 points, they're great at killing stuff. They draw all the fire in the world, but do they help you score points? So I'm going to test without one of them to start with. Lots of little squads, a couple of exorcists, and 21 repentia, because they're incredible. They're so good, especially if you're Order of the Bloody Rose and you take the Passion. They run in, put the war hymn on them, and they're like 28 attacks, hitting on 4s with re-rolls, wounding most things on a 2 at AP4. And
Very strong.
yeah, so I was quite hopeful that if I played Marines, I could pick them up, but I didn't end up against playing any Marines.
Maybe next time. Robbie.
What did you end up facing a lot of?
Yeah, so I mean, my first game was a guy called Will who was playing Gene Stealer Colt, and he beat me 90 to 89.
Oh, gutted.
Yeah.
And I can literally put it down to one moment. He had a squad of 20 neophytes that came on the side of the board, and I shot them with a sister squad. Celestine charged, and there were about 4 left. He passes the morale, and then has them fall back onto the objective at the end of the turn, which gave me a 4. And because he was going last, he was getting a 12 at the end. And yeah, he literally just edged it on that, which, you know, is a really smart play on his part. And so yeah, that was game 1. Game 2, I then played Simon Laxton, who's one of the very good Drakari players down this way, and it was textbook Drakari. It was quite close for a couple of turns, and then I think you talk about on Real Space Raiders, George, turn 3, the go turn, and he just blitzed through everything.
Yeah.
You can probably blame George for that, but we'll go to that when we get to George.
I don't take credit for that. Simon's a long time Drakari player, and he's really, really good. Like, I don't take any credit for Simon's work. He does it all himself. We talk almost daily about list ideas and tactics and things like that, and he inspires me just as much as I inspire him. I think. Like,
I meant more as he's out for blood after round 1.
Yeah, he was actually. Yeah, I think. We'll get into that in a bit, but I think the curse is alive for me and him.
Saying about he's a really good player, his position was absolutely spot on, because we were playing the Long Ways mission, and I had some stuff in reserve, so I was going to bring it on from the sides. So I walked around the board edge with my 9-inch measuring stick. There was not a single spot he hadn't got something screening. It was just.
You must have had good terrain, because my second mission I had nothing. Like I had like one very small piece of terrain to hide behind against my opponent, and couldn't hide anything to save my life. So you must have had a decent table. Yeah,
we had some quite big chunky pieces, which kind of suited us both, because neither of our armies are particularly resilient, but he had that edge on the speed just to come from hiding in and kill me. So that one finished 93-57 to Simon.
Yeah, he was out for blood.
Yeah, he's a very good player, and I'd love to get another game with him at some point down the line.
It's Brady Back Pro.
So then game 3, I ran into Mickey, formerly of Bugle Bat Reps, now Team Powerhouse.
I've never even heard of Powerhouse Gaming. Is that bad? Like, should I know about Powerhouse Gaming? Like,
can't be out there, can I?
I didn't know there was another group. Like, to be honest.
So yeah, Mickey's a lovely guy to play. I think we were both struggling at the end of that one, to be honest. We both just knackered, and yeah, it was actually my worst score of the weekend. I only got 38 to his 100, and he just completely bullied me on the primary.
Who needs friends, fucking Robbie, when you got people like that?
Yeah, well, he did this trick where the Gene Stealers come out 8 inches from the blip, spend a command point to advance 6, and then turn 1 they charge right into the middle of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And picked up 2 little squads, and it was one of the themes of the weekend is I really struggle if turn one somebody just goes deal with that, and I'm working on it. I've got some ideas, but so yeah.
We can all help with that, mate.
Yeah.
So
transports help. Put your girls in rhinos.
There's one on the painting table now.
Yeah. Put your girls in rhinos, then he charges the rhino, and if he kills the rhino, you don't really care, because then your girls get out and flame the hell out of whatever killed the rhino.
Yeah,
more rhinos and more flamethrowers is the current plan.
That's it, Robbie. That's it. Flamethrowers the key.
Yeah, so it's a bit despondent having sort of lost quite heavy to Mickey, but had a nice chilled out Saturday because I had Ewan with me. We didn't go out with this lot. We had a quiet night in. I had a good chat with Mickey over breakfast, actually. He wasn't too hanging, which was a surprise.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I can't believe that. Yeah.
And then game 4, I played Rob Angel from Curtin, who...
nice bloke, Rob.
He's absolute star. He's there and he's played his guard in his pith helmet, and he was playing an all tank list, no infantry. I think it was 11 tanks.
Yeah, he loved it, didn't he?
And it was just really good fun. And I got first turn and managed to get the Alpha Strike off with the Immolator and took out one of his tanks, and the 2 Exorcists combined to bring down another one. And I was talking to Rob afterwards, and I said to him, you've got to trust the high toughness of stuff. He was still trying to play quite cagey with these toughness 8, toughness 9 tanks. And by the end of my 3rd turn, I'd scored 33 points on primary, and he hadn't scored any. And it was just, he's never going to catch that up. I didn't have a lot left on the board by the end, but I was able to kill 5 or 6 of the tanks. And
I remember you was very enthusiastic Sunday morning when you read, I've got tanks, after bugs and bugs and bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually nice to have something worth shooting a multi-melter at. So, yeah, I managed to win that one 93 to 54, which was really pleasing. And then the last game, I played Orcs. It's actually the first time I've played Orcs since their Codex.
Orcs.
You know any Orc players, Martin?
Huh?
You know any Orc players, Martin?
I am the Orc player.
So, yeah, I played a guy called Christian, and it was much the same problem as I said about with Mickey. Turn 1, everything just comes racing across the board, right up in my face, and just couldn't deal with it quick enough to get out and still score the points.
Yeah, Orcs, when they call that war,
disgusting.
with a 5-up involve and toughness 5 across the table, it's hard to deal with. You don't deal with them that turn.
Yeah, I mean, he did look slightly shocked because he was like, I've got 10 boys on this objective. I'm toughness 5, I'll be fine. Not sure when I'm going to charge all the Repentia in there, but yeah, it was loads and loads of hand-to-hand everywhere in that one, and he just had so many bodies, and it was all played in my half of the table.
It's double kill rig as well, yeah?
Yeah, double kill rig, which not very pleasant.
You got mine?
Only 1.
Those are rookie numbers. You need to bump up those numbers.
Yeah. So I mean, I lost that one 97-57. So ended up 1 and 4, but scored really well.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing to pay attention to, Robbie. It's not so much your win-loss ratio. Is look at your scores. Like, how many points did you drop overall in the tournament? I know you had like a couple of big losses because you said you struggled with the in your face, like the high pressure armies that build pressure really early on in the game. But there's ways that you can build, like, tailor your army to counter that and handle it better and change your deployment a little bit. But the fact that you were still consistently scoring throughout all your games, even though you're on the back foot in most of them, is really good. Is really commendable. So,
yeah. One of the things I've said is picking secondaries has always been something I've struggled with. With Sisters, I've got Leap of Faith, which I scored 12 points every game, and Defend the Shrine, which I averaged out at just over 10.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's that's 22 points straight out every game. I don't really have to think about whether I'm picking those two.
Mm.
So I can just concentrate on what's the third one and play in the mission properly.
Yeah, I mean,
Which-
most competitive army lists, you want to focus on like 2 that you score pretty much regardless of what your opponent has. Most armies struggle for the third. Usually the third depends on what you're facing, because it's usually like a kill one. If you've got a codex that can have 3 that don't need any interaction with your opponent, then it's crazy. Like, that's what made Necron so ridiculous.
I was never going to say that once.
Very
Yeah,
neck.
like they literally they just do the same 3 every single time. It doesn't matter what your opponent has. Like, they still do it. So like,
Yeah.
certain armies can do that. They can build for 3 secondaries relatively easily. I think Sisters have 2 really good ones in their codex, but I don't know what slots they take up. Is it battle? Do they take up Battlefield Supremacy and what's it called? The Take and Hold one, is it?
Right, is it?
I
Probably.
think one of them comes as No Mercy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Usually that's the most popular one, isn't it? Really, all the good secondaries are in there, I find.
Yeah, I mean, my main 2 I go for like Battlefield Supremacy and Shadow Operations. So like, I tend to go R&D or Retrieve Battlefield Data, whatever it's called now. And then used to be Heard, then it was Engaged, now it's Behind Enemy Lines. But like, any one of those 3 is like ones that you can build for relatively easily. So without sacrificing too much of your army, and you focus on those 2 that are like independent of what your opponent can do almost. And then the third one, maybe you need to look at like, what kind of thing, what are the things you can take. I mean, obviously just as you can't take psychic secondaries because, you know, burn the mooch and all that, but yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I'm debating. Is it worth splicing an Inquisitor in there to open up the psychic secondaries?
Possibly, because the risk of taking a single Inquisitor last time was it opened you up to the Thousand Suns matchup. So the Thousand Suns used to have a secondary called something of Magnus. Can't remember.
Magnus or something.
Magnus, yeah. So it was like, if they cast more powers than you, they get like, it was basically like an auto 15 for them. So when you were coming in with like just 1 Librarian or 1 Inquisitor, you just give away 15, and obviously it stops you from taking aboard the Witch. But now the Wrath of Magnus one is, it's not whether you cast more than your opponent, it's whether you cast like from a certain number of schools or something, because they've got like
disciplines, like Witchfire. You know, the aggressive ones. You have to cast more of those spells.
Witchfire and Bressons.
Yeah, it's not like the auto 15 it was. So the burden of taking an Inquisitor to do your Warp Ritual, because it probably will be Warp Ritual, because you don't really want to take Psychic Interrogation anymore, because it's rubbish. It's so easy to block Psychic Interrogation now. So it's really just Warp Ritual. But the problem with Warp Ritual is you need an army that can threaten and hold mid. And if you haven't got an army that can threaten and hold, your Psych is just going to get picked up. He's just going to get sort of like singled out and then picked up turn 3, 4, and then you won't max out that secondary. So it depends on your army, basically. Like, Custodes is good in, because Custodes can just move like big bricks of Wardens or Terminators. Like, again, like things like Ravenwing, they can go their Deathwing Terminators and things like that, like Death Guard. They can all do it because they've got a big, heavy footprint. Sisters aren't really known for having a heavy footprint. They play the trade game. So it's worth experimenting with, but my gut says probably not the way to go, other than to try it out. See, I might be completely wrong. I never play Sisters, so I never play Psychos because I'm a Dark Elder.
Yeah, it's on the list to try, but my a bit like you, my gut feeling is I'm probably not tough enough to pull it off, but we'll give it a go. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's how Sisters gone. So then moving on to the lad. Big brave lad taking nids after nerf, after nerf, after nerf.
They got nerfed for no reason, the last one, wasn't it? Just like picking on nids, isn't it?
At this point, it's just stepping on cockroaches now, mate. That's all it is.
Put Paddy back in his box.
What sort of list did you run, Ewan?
It was a bit of a mix of everything really. There were Swarmlord, Dimachairon, Tyrannofex, and then lots of infantry.
Yeah, well, you had the Parasite
Yeah.
and the Lictor and
Yeah.
your 9 warriors, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then a couple of smaller squads, little gaunts, gargoyles.
And what was you running them as this time?
High Fleet Behemoth.
And that was helping your monsters out, was it?
No, it was charging.
Is it reroll charges and is it bonus strength on the charge as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, so +1 strength and re-roll your charges. Did you swap out the adaptive trait, Ewan, or did you just keep it basic?
I just kept it how it was, I think.
That's cool. That's good. Re-roll charges is really good, particularly if you're bringing in things from reserve. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, strong.
I think most games I had 4 or 5 units in reserve.
so yeah, you keep the re-roll charges.
So what armies did you run into?
So game 1 I had Rob Angel from Curtin that he played with the 11 tanks.
The thing about Rob's list that made me laugh was if you looked at Rob's list but didn't see Rob's name next to it, you'd think it would be like a meta chasing like competitive arse, because it was just like who the hell runs like 11 Lehman Russ tanks? But like that just sounds like one of those like really high tailored like leaf blower lists from earlier editions. But then you see Rob's name next to it and he said, no, he just wanted to run tanks. There's no thought behind this. It's just, how many tanks can I get in an army? That many. There we go.
But it was on Abandoned Sanctuaries, and then the 2 like midpoint objectives on the side, they were just fence cover, so I just couldn't really get any primary because I just get blasted off the board.
Yeah, we'll come to terrain, but was it a bit opinionated on terrain, like a very vocal.
Yeah, and I don't know. I didn't score a lot that game just because I couldn't get out of my own deployment zone. It was quite rough.
Yeah, I mean, looking down the tables, it looked great because you've got these big tanks and these big monsters. And then I looked a couple of turns later and there weren't many monsters left.
I know, it was next to me, Ewan, weren't you, on your first game? It was basically, bless him, the boy was looking over at me and I was like, oh, I can't help you, mate. I've got a bloodthirster in my deployment, so I can't help you.
And I can only do 8 wounds a turn to him.
Yeah. I was sweating
game,
myself then.
Game 2, I had the demons that John played on first round. And so I made a bit of a mistake. I didn't realise that he could just shoot all of my warriors off the board on the first turn. I think he got on the D6 weapon, he got a 1 and he CP'd it to a 6. And then the other one was a 5.
It's got that phlegm. It's got 2 weapon profiles. One of them is -3 D6 shots, strength 10 or something. -3 damage each.
Oh, he got,
and it's blast.
Did he have soul grinders, did he?
Yeah, soul grinders. Yeah, 2 of them. They're kitted out. They're quite mean, actually.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't go into my zone thrope imperative on that first turn. So I had no invuln on the warriors, and then they were all just dead. And then there were 3 bloodthirsters running at me and 20 bloodletters, and I couldn't really take enough hits, really.
I would have charged.
Swarmlord looks big and scary till the greater demons show up.
Yeah.
He did basically kill the wound capped bloodthirster on his own, because that's what he does.
The Reaper of Glitteraxe.
No, a Swarmlord.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like
Nice.
him.
Yeah, he is good.
I would have sent the Swarmlord in. Headbutt Bloodthirster.
So then what was your third game?
Game 3 was Knights, and it was hold 2, hold 3, hold more objective. So I was just struggling on primary a lot. What, sorry?
Is it Obsec Knights? Lots of small ones, or
there were 2 big Knights and then I want to say 6 smaller ones.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, and then there were a few key moments where I just got some unlucky charge rolls. I think the Daimokawa missed the charge and then the reroll, got shot off the board next turn. I think I had the Swarmlord charge in, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, and he only got 3 wounds.
Oh yeah.
That's not fun.
No, it was all right though. We managed. It came a lot closer at the end because I scored quite well on behind enemy lines and bring it down. But I ended up losing that one as well.
Then you had the Mike Mallows, didn't you? Game 4.
Oh yeah,
Legend.
Legend, Mike.
Yeah. Absolutely great bloke
Yeah.
to have a game with. So
yeah, he was a really lovely guy. He went first.
with a Raven Wing Deathwing combo.
I'm not. I think it was like nearly 25 bikes all shooting at me. I think I lost about a third of my army.
He had a lot
More
of
than
the knights as well with the plasma bikes.
Yeah, it was mostly
Oh,
that.
yeah.
'Cause I lost a lot of my army before I did anything.
Yeah.
Again, I made it closer, but the bikes just go where they want, kill what they want, and with the apothecary next to them as well.
Yeah.
It just takes so long to kill them.
And then you had
Jules.
you finished up with Thousand Suns, didn't you?
Yeah, and it was Shadow in the Warp did so much for me. Just reducing their casting, and then I have a lot of denies. I think it was 5. 1 from the Zoanthrope, 2 from the Neurothrope, and 2 from the Swarmlord. And I was just stronger in the middle than he was.
Yeah.
Because it was
I can't-
Def and Zeo, I think it was.
Yeah. The circular.
Yeah.
You're only 9 back from the centre to start with one.
Yeah, and I just put everything into it.
I guess as well with Thousand Suns, 'cause most of their damage comes in mortal wounds, doesn't it? And I guess your warriors can soak that relatively well just because of the amount of wounds they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful looking Thousand Suns army, but it wasn't the most meta. He only had 1 block with 5 Terminators.
Scarabs, they're brilliant.
Yeah.
Scarab Terminators, yeah.
I think like when you see people running 3 lots of 10 in some of these lists.
I think the typical loadout that was running before Arcs of Omen was like 2 blobs of 10 and then some rubrics, the usual characters like Ahriman, Demon Prince, and another caster of some kind. And then it would be like an allied demon detachment with a change caster and 3 squads of flamers. Like that was like the go-to Thousand Suns list. Like, but since the nerf to demons, since the nerf to flamers, I'm not sure you'll see them as much. I think Thousand Suns are pretty.
This guy had taken 2 of the Helvrins, the autocannon knights.
Yeah.
In that space, and
There were 2, like, can't remember what they're called. There was some kind of dread.
oh yeah, the old school little dreads.
Dreads.
Yeah, the old little Chaos Marine
I
dreads.
think it was Hell something.
Hell Brutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was those. Somehow both of them got taken out by Death Leaper just on his own.
No.
Yeah, I think it was just I bought so much in from reserve, and I had such a strong center. He couldn't really, and it was the psychic phase because I was restricting his so much.
Yeah.
It takes away so much of his firepower.
The main
It's
thing what
good-
Spawn does is the psychic phase, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good to hear that like Shadow in the Warp does actually have a big part to play against psychic armies because you want it to. Narratively, Shadow of the Warp should be like a psycho army's worst nightmare because in the lore that's what it is. Like it's like you go near a Tyranid High Fleet, your psychos go nuts. Like they can't do anything. It's so yeah, like it's good to hear that actually it plays out in a game like that. That your Shadow in the Warp really played in your favor and held him back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
it's good that you got that win at the end, Ewan.
Yeah, yeah. Because I had a lot of really tough games, but they were all really lovely guys as well.
Yeah.
I had
That's good
5
to
really
hear.
nice opponents.
Obviously,
And
like
that's where-
Nid's taken enough, and then they have. See, you must have felt that pain over the weekend, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I definitely missed the harpy from not long ago.
But yeah, the
I don't.
his list to get it back under the points, you had to drop about 250 points out, which
That's
with
crazy.
the harpy getting nerfed as well, that was just the obvious thing to drop.
Mhm.
So whereas Marines running around with like an extra 400 points in their pocket, Nids are losing a couple of hundred. And I think you said before we started recording, the balance, they don't seem to be able to go from there to there. They seem to go from there to there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It skews a bit too far at times.
Yeah, because I said, like we said at the beginning, like Space Marines got like 3 buffs. They got sticky objectives. They got massive point reductions, like some of the biggest I've ever seen in this game. The change in the force org chart and the doctrines, like sticking on what doctrines you want. They lost armor of contempt, which is a big deal, but I thought it was a bad mechanic anyway. And when you're comparing it to like having sort of 20% more Marines on the board, like 20% more wounds on the board, losing that armor of contempt isn't that big a loss. And when you also match that up with I'm getting 3 storm shields on like everything, like it's suddenly losing armor of contempt really isn't that massive. I don't think for certain Marines anyway. I think Blood Angels are suffering a little
Armor
bit.
of contempt hurts me more than it hurts Marines.
Yeah, because you lost over your sisters, didn't you?
Yeah, and of course we're only toughness 3 and 1 wound each. So they fall apart a lot quicker without it.
Yeah, and then the reverse of it, you look at Tyranids, and they lost like some of their, like quite a few of their core book mechanics have massively changed from how they've written. Like you can't do the adaptive strategies anymore. Tyrant's got to be the warlord, and if he dies, you don't get your psychic, your synaptic imperatives. Huge point increases, like across the whole army. Particularly to the really big offenders, losing Leviathan Tyranid warriors, so they don't exist anymore. Some big changes. I think Tyranids got hurt a bit too much. I think as much as they were dominant, they got hit too hard. They should probably look to give them something back. I think.
Yeah, well, I think Ewan was saying for the next event, he's got a bit of a Salamanders collection. So he's gonna try some Marines, and obviously I've got my Death Watch, so he's gonna borrow bits of those to get him up to the 2000 and see how he gets on with that.
You know who to listen to?
Not John.
You love Salamanders, George. I know you do.
I do love Salamanders. They're my 3rd favorite Legion. I think I'll put them 3rd. I think just below White Scars and Space Wolves.
So we've already had conversations where he's like, how many aggressors can I get my hands on? And
18.
Yeah, 18 aggressors, all with flamestorms.
He's only got 9.
It's a good start.
He's got
Those
bolts.
are rookie numbers. He needs to bump up those numbers.
so yeah, he's gonna see how those go, and you know we're what 6 months away from 10th edition probably as well, and that's going to throw everything right up in the air again. So
yeah, it's pointless even thinking about it, honestly, guys. Like speaking from experience of someone who's gone through multiple edition changes, planning for a new edition, completely pointless. You can't even begin to predict what they're going to change. Like points, core mechanics of the game, maps, terrain layouts, terrain features, like the list goes on and on and on. Just play the crazy Arcs of Omen as is going to be for the next 6 months until we hear more about 10th edition, and then start making plans.
Yeah, this is the idea. You can bring Salamanders, have some fun, try something different, and then when 10th comes, we'll see where the land lies and whether you play the Nids or the Sallies then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's good that you got a written in. It's also rough remembering, obviously, like you are younger than the majority of players that went.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like competitive players there as well.
Yeah.
So you definitely done well without being ageist or whatever you call it. You've done well for you, especially with Nids being that so hard. So well done.
Yeah, well done, mate.
Yeah, well done, mate.
Thank you.
So that finally leads us on to the Drakari.
This guy.
Go for it,
So,
George.
yeah, so I took Drakari, obviously, because that's all I ever take. But there's a different list again. I usually change my list up for every event just because I like experimenting. But because of I'd say not a huge amount change for Drakari. It was the biggest boon was the loss of Armor Contempt going, because Armor Contempt really hurt us because there's so much of our army that's like AP1, and when Armor Contempt was around, it was just bouncing all the time, and it was really frustrating because Drakari are a bit like sisters. They're a trade army, and if you go into a unit and you bounce, I lose my unit because you can throw wet tissue at a Drakari army and it will fold. So the loss of Armor Contempt was good. Arcs of Omen is actually a bit of a negative for us. We actually lost a lot of our customization because we lost the triple patrol, which gave us a huge amount of flexibility in our list design. Luckily, GW brought out an FAQ to allow us to take a Arcs of Omen detachment and a allied patrol, so I can have 2 obsessions that way. But for this particular event, I took a real space raid, so I took an Arcs of Omen detachment with an Archon of Homunculus and a Succubus, and made it into a real space raid. To allow all my guys to have obsessions in the army. Other than that, my main stipulation was I wanted to try my Tantalus out. So I haven't used my Tantalus in an event since we all went to that one in Red Ruth. And I really enjoyed using it then, and that was back when it was like 280 points, and now it's 220 points. And I think it's in a really good place now. I think it's just that right side of cost where it's efficient, it's a massive distraction, and in the way I ran it in Dark Technomancer, it can hit really hard into what's typically being seen in the meta right now, which is Marines, because firing out 12 Strength 8 AP3 flat damage 3 with +1 to wound shots is really brutal into Marines. It just picks them up basically. So yeah, my list consisted of a Tantalus, a couple of units of Chronos, some Incubi, because you always have Incubi, my beatstick characters, a unit of Amoxites to sit on the backfield, and then MSU, Reaver jet bikes, and troops to play the objective game. And it worked a lot better than I thought it would, to be honest. I played around with the Chronos because they work really well in Dark Technomancer, and now that in Arcs of Omen you don't have to spend CP to put things in reserve. It went from, if I wanted to put Chronos in reserve before, it would have cost me like 2 to 3 CP. Now it costs me nothing. So I can put 2 units of 2 in reserve, and they come on. They've got really nasty flamers and a blast, 18-inch blast gun that are all both very good at killing Marines, particularly with that Armor of Contempt. And then my boats and my Tantalus basically that were just filled with some of my hardest hitting melee characters and units. But all in all, it did really, really well, and I feel a bit of a thief, really, a bit of a sneaky thief, because I managed to pip John to a podium spot, which was a bit cheeky of me, and I wasn't really expecting it, if I'm honest, because my lineup was tough. This is one of the hardest runs I think I've had at a tournament, besides maybe Beachhead last year. Which was really brutal back when Custodies were at their peak and Tau had just come out, and for some reason the TO decided they would let Tau Codex in before it had even been looked at by an FAQ, and you had all the indirect fire nonsense. But anyway, so first game, the curse was alive, and I drew into the aforementioned Simon Laxton, and one of only 2 other Drakari players there. There was only 3 of us. And we drew each other round 1 again, which was really unfortunate. I love playing Simon, don't get me wrong, like he's a lovely bloke, but I like to see all Drakari do well at events. So the fact that like 2 of us play each other round 1, only one of us is going to come out of that likely with a victory, which means the other guy is starting the weekend off with a loss. I didn't care if I lost or won, but I was going to give him a good game and make it fun. I feel like we had a good game. It was quite close up. It was a bit like Robbie said. It was close up until it wasn't, where Turn 4-5, it really started to swing heavily in my favour on primary, in particular. But he still got a good score. I think he got 84 or 85. But I managed to get a max of 97 against him, which was a really good score for me, really surprising. And I'm looking forward to the next time I play Simon, which will probably be at the next event we both go to, because apparently that's just the nature of 40k right now. But unfortunately for me, that 97 put me straight into the firing line of Manny Chima with his Ravenwing Deathwing combo on the Scouring mission, which is literally my worst mission. I hate that mission because all the objectives are in the middle of the board, and usually they're all in the open as well. And Drukhari cannot hold objectives in the open, just can't. They're too fragile. And particularly this Ravenwing Deathwing combo that Manny's sporting, and I'm sure he's probably going to go and win Beachhead this weekend. And once he does that, everyone's going to be like, hey, look at that list, and they're all going to copy it, and it'll be everywhere. Because it's very, very good. It's extremely fast. It's extremely durable. It has shenanigans all over the place. It's in your face immediately with basically the whole army besides 2 blocks of Deathwing Terminators that just sit at the back with an apothecary saying, come kill me if you can, but first you got to get through bikes and land speeders and characters, and yeah. So it was
flashbacks.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I mean, I like playing Manny. He's a good guy, a really good player, obviously, because it's basically his job. But I think if we had, and he said as well, if it was any other mission, it would have been a really, really close game. My strategy was sound. The mission really hurt me. But basically, my strategy in an army list like this is to take out his speed and ignore the Deathwing Terminators. I can't kill him. I don't really want to kill him. And in most missions, you wouldn't have to kill them because they can only be in 2 places at once. So they can be on 2 objectives. You can have them all game. And then if I kill like his land speeders and his like flanking units, I can work the flanks and work the missions on that, which I did. And I still, even though I lost and all I had left at the end of the game was basically my Tantalus, I managed to hit everything of his besides like one of his characters and his Deathwing Terminators, and still scored a 76 despite like not going first, losing about 500 points turn 1 to his shooting. Yeah, it was brutal. That list is nasty. But anyway, yeah, I took a loss on that one, which was fine. And then I went into new Astra Militarum for the first time. A guy called Matt, lovely bloke, not played him before, but apparently he's friends with Gary from the Black Crow Brew. And Gary's a very good, Gary Moore. He's a very good Astra Militarum player. And he's been giving him tips. And New Guard are crazy. Like it's I think between the Ravenwing game and the New Guard game, I got a little bit annoyed because I was like, I'm just so fed up of not being the fastest army anymore. Like, because that was Drukhari's thing. Like, that was my one thing, was I had the speed. But like, even Guard now are faster than me because they can give an order to their tanks, which give them all like +2 move, and they can advance and still shoot all their guns. Like, so you've got like Lehman Russ tanks that are moving like 15, 16 inches. Like, and still fire, like with all their guns. It's like, I can't do that. Like, my Ravagers only move 14, and they're rubbish compared to a Lehman Russ. Like, whatever. So yeah, it was. I think that was a really hard game. I played it in a similar way to how I play against Tal, where I just basically throw everything at him, like immediately, and get in his face. And I think where it played off was we had a really big like crashed aircraft in the middle of the table, which was obscuring terrain, and I managed to play around that so his tanks couldn't see through it, and he had to like kind of swing around the plane, and I could, using my fly, just hop over it and tag him. So it was a really close game. The game ended, I had basically no models left, but I kept him off primary. and managed to score a 97 on that one as well. So I had 2 max scoring games for me because I always dropped 3 because of retrieved battlefield data. But yeah, that was a bloody game. Tantalus only lasted 1 turn that game, which was great. But but guard shooting is crazy. Those mortars are way too cheap for the firepower they put out. But I think the one that really got me is they've got in their command squad, they've got a banner that gives an aura of ignore, feel no pain, and wound caps and stuff, like anything that ignores damage.
Banner bullshit.
Yeah, this banner with an aura effect turns it off. Just like all the units within 6 of him, so all his mortars, all his Lehman Russ tanks. I was like, that's mental. Like an aura.
It's core locked, isn't it?
Say again.
It's core locked, I think, isn't it?
It's
Is
cool.
it? I don't know. I mean, it didn't. I mean, the main thing it did was he put it on his mortars, and his mortars picked up all but 1 of my homoxites. Luckily, I still had the 1 left, and then over the course of the next 3 turns, my homunculus just resurrected them because he gets D3 back a turn. So it was like I got down to 1 homoxite, and then by the end of turn 5, they were back up to 10 again. I was like, yay! That was good because I managed to get my Reavers into his mortars turn 2 to shut them down to stop them from shooting me. But yeah, Astra Minotaur are really strong. The score, I think I got a bit lucky with the terrain in particular. Being able to jump over that plane made a massive difference because I could mitigate his firing lanes. And the Succubus just went on a tear. Just going hunting down his characters basically to stop his orders from going off. Because the orders just really amplify guard to another level. So if you're facing them and you have ways to get to their characters, even though they're not that like physically imposing, the force amplification they have on the rest of the force is insane. So kill them fast.
You want to see guard in action? Go back a few weeks. We've done a battle port with new guard and Chaos Demons, and you see that banner bullshit in action.
Yeah, that banner is crazy. I can't believe it's
Here's
an
when you
aura.
got a Wounds Cap Broadcaster.
Yeah. I thought it was. I had it in my head. It was like a command phase, like selector unit, like that unit has it. But not like to be an aura is like, oh man, that's silly. Anyway, yeah, that was the end of day 1. So 2 wins and a loss, and my loss being to Manishima, so not at all bad. Then going into day 2, I faced Orcs, a Goth list. And unfortunately, the luck was dead against my opponent this game. I got turn 1, I blew up a battle wagon, it exploded in his lines, and did like 5 mortal wounds to everything within 6 inches. I parked an empty raider in front of him to stop him from moving, which he then charged, and that blew up, dealt D3 mortals to like everything within 6 inches. Managed to finish off a truck, which had his truck boys in. And he lost 2 of the truck boys in the explosion, and the truck exploded, which did like D3 mortal wounds to everything. Everything exploded, basically. It was just one of those crazy games where the dice just hated my opponent. And I was just rolling 5s and 6s on all the explosions. And yeah, it wasn't pretty. So it was pretty much game after turn 2. His War turn came in, he sort of whiff rolled some of his charges and just left himself out in the open, and then my witches and incubi and characters just went bloop and picked them all up. And I got a max score in that one. I got a 97 in that one as well. So 3 max scores, but 1 loss. I was thinking, yeah, it's all right. I'll see what I get next. And I get paired up into Dave Laporta with his Tau, who was on 4-0. So that was nice. So he was on like the bottom of the 4-0 group, and I was on the top of the 3-1 group. So we got paired. And I got to play Tau, which is never a great game for me, to be honest. But saying that, Dave is a nice guy. I have to be quick because I think my battery's about to die, so I don't want to cut out mid-sentence. But basically, Dave's dice suck. My dice were hot. I got turn 1. I charged everything I could into him and hoped for luck. And luck was on my side this game. So things that just shouldn't have gone my way went my way. Things that should have gone Dave's way didn't go Dave's way. And by the time he'd killed me, at the end of the game, all I had left was my homunculus and my Archon. That's all I had left. Everything else was dead. But all he had left was Riptide on like basically no wounds, and something else. Can't remember what. Wasn't significant. Yeah, so yeah, we had 4 models left on the board at the end of the game, but I was too far ahead on primary because I just hemmed him into his corner. I managed to keep him there just by throwing things at him and letting them die, just throwing things to the meat grinder. And in the end, I ended up with I think I dropped 1 point in that game. I got 96, so still a very, very, very good score. And I finished 3rd overall, which I was really surprised at because I thought after my loss to Manny, I thought that's podium out the way. Let's just have a laugh. I said my games, apart from like the Goth Orc game, were really hard, really, really hard. The Tau game in particular was a slog.
But yeah, it's good that obviously you come 3rd, John King 4th. So good to have a few of us up there, top for everyone. What's the answer? Obviously, we thought we should mention about the terrain. Because obviously, it came up quite vocal. Not just you guys, but a lot of other players who went as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to start by acknowledging that it is difficult for tournament organisers to get their hands on enough terrain without a substantial financial investment or the sheer amount of time it takes to put it all together as well. So, sort of taking that as a caveat, some of the tables were absolutely spot on. Unfortunately, I played Mickey on one that was spot on, and he was able to hide all his nasty little cultists.
On for GSC, yeah.
There were definitely some where you had these big blocks. There was one table I played the Orcs on. It was a 3D printed, and it was a ruined Titan, and it looked spectacular. But there was a sort of C-shaped wall about 6 inches tall, probably 14-inch diameter.
Yeah.
And it almost filled a quarter of the table. And I had the objective inside that was the shrine. And so the Orcs were constantly having to walk right up to it and then hope they made a good enough charge roll to get through because it was breachable and into me.
Yeah.
And like he wasn't able to get any shooting onto units that were on that objective at all.
Yeah. Sounded like it was very much like some tables, luck of the tables, how to match up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had my last game was really I faced Tom with his Chaos Knights, and it was really interesting actually because he had played on it the game prior, and I was looking at the terrain and I was fiddling around with the terrain because I was like, well, this terrain, because it was so big, I mean, there were probably C-shaped, but they're probably 6 inches tall and like 18 inches wide by 18. So like these huge, there was basically just 4 huge terrain pieces in each corner. But because it was the scouring, I think, you had central objective in the middle with hardly anything around it. And then you had all these 4 objectives basically hidden in obscuring terrain. But in the deployment zones, they weren't obscuring; they were ruins. So I was like, we can't play this because I've got my entire army behind a ruin that you can shoot through, and you're going to stand over there 60 inches away from me and just shoot me off the table. Like I'm not like this. This can't work. This cannot happen. So we completely rejigged the whole table, and we kind of made our own. We mutually agreed to make our own rules up with the terrain, but that was the worst experience I had on those. Otherwise, it was okay. It was pretty consistent on the tables I was on because if there was anything I was concerned about, I just had an honest conversation with my opponent. It was just like, look, this is this, that is that. What happens if this? And that's the thing I would always recommend is just talk it through with your opponent and mutually agree. So that the understanding of how a terrain interacts with the game is understood by both players. Because there's nothing worse when you make a move and you get yourself in position and you're say in front of a terrain piece, you're like, I'm taking cover, and the guy's like, you're not getting cover from there. That's not how it works, type thing, you know. And then your plan or your intention is completely scuppered. That can have a real nasty leave a nasty taste in someone's mouth. That
I think
Good.
one thing the TO had done well with the terrain though is he'd done like an A4 sheet for each table, which had all the traits for the terrain pieces as he'd laid it out at the start.
Yeah.
So that does take away some of the potential for what John was saying, but because some of these pieces were so big, I found quite a few games we were having to move them around to make sure we could get around things first. And like I wasn't playing particularly big models. I think I got a few Rhino chassis tanks, but you know the guys playing knights. I think if their opponent wasn't sort of willing to move stuff and be sporting with it, could have been quite difficult for them.
Yeah. Just talk about terrain, George.
Yeah, sorry about that. My phone died, so I had to go and quickly grab my charger. So apologies for that ruining the video. But yeah, the terrain was it was mixed when it like Robbie said, like it was nice that they had the sheet of A4 that said like it was all like fixed where they were supposed to be and what the traits were. So that was like a uniform aspect to the terrain, but the terrain wasn't uniform. Like some of them you'd have like buildings, other ones you just have a big lump of resin, and it would be like, can I go on the bottom floor, or do I have to go on top, and can I go on top? And so yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag. I said like some of my games I had like a huge amount of terrain, which made a massive difference, and then other games it didn't feel like I had, even though every table had the same types of terrain and the same layout. The size differences between tables was odd. It was a bit, and like sometimes you'd get one side of the table that would have like two really big ruins that would be there obscuring, and then the other side of the table would have two sort of very small buildings that didn't have much of a footprint but would be like really tall but not very wide. So actually physically don't actually hide much other than by the base size, but the base size of the ruin was a lot smaller than what was on the other side of the board, which means it's more difficult to hide your stuff. So yeah, but I mean, to be honest, like we're only really just starting to get the ball rolling with like competitive terrain down here in the southwest, aren't we? Let's face it. It's most of the events you go to, it's very much like hobby RTT style kind of terrains where it looks really good, and a lot of the terrain did look really cool, but it's not very functional. It was form over function really, and I think when you go to like competitive events, people focus much more on the function of terrain now rather than the form of the terrain. Which is ups and downs. I mean, obviously it's from a narrative point of view, it's not great, but you're not going there for the narrative. You're going there to compete, and you want the terrain to be functional and preferably even. So yeah, that was a bit of a negative, because certain tables had it really good and other tables definitely did not have it really good. But it's the same as like the Curtain Carnage one. Like you'll get some tables that are like really, really good, really dense. And other tables like the infamous Tau table, where like everything, like you it might as well be a bowling ball. It's like it's just nothing. It looks really good, like it looks amazing because it's all like Tau themed, and it's
scenery, isn't it? Is it the Star Wars
yeah. It's like it looks like almost like yeah, it looks like a scene from Mos Eisley or something, or Tatooine. Like it's it looks really good. Yeah, but from a competitive standpoint, it's not good, because if you get paired up against someone who's got like a heavy shooting list, and typically at the Southwest events you do see quite a heavy shooting meta because of the terrain, then it can be a bit of a one-sided fight. So, but yeah, but other than that, I think it was fine. It was definitely better than the last PAW I went to. The last PAW I went to in 2020. They were literally, okay, because this is before 9th, this is back in 8th edition, and you didn't have like the obscuring terrain, and it was all just true line of sight all the time. That was really difficult, and like they even had like terrain pieces that would be like aquarium rocks, but they're like porous, so they got like holes in the rocks. So you're like, even though you're hidden behind a big rock, there's a big donut hole going straight through it, so they can trail their railgun into you, and you're like, yeah, that's fun. So at least now you've got obscuring to help you a little bit with that, but there was definitely disparity between the tables as to who had the best obscuring terrain.
Yeah.
If only there's some events coming with all competitive terrain on.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Martin. You should get on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I tell you,
Yeah.
another a thing for me, not so much on the terrain, but it was the table setup, because they had all the tables in
Yeah.
one big line. So on some of
Yeah.
the missions, I think it was mission
2.
I was on an end.
It wasn't Dawn of War, it was Hammer and
You
Anvil.
lucky bugger.
And like, you had to deploy half your army over, but you'd have to walk
Yeah.
around 8 tables to get to the other side of the board. So you've got to trust that your opponent is putting your models down as best as you can. And
Yeah.
again, in a competitive scene, I mean, it's nice for ice breaking with your opponent, but you know, it's quite likely that the wrong opponent could also use that to their advantage a little bit at a crux.
Yeah, it's happened to me at games before. I think honestly, like if you're playing in a tournament and you've got rows of tables, just don't do any of the missions where it's side to side deployment or a short edge deployment. It's too much of a hassle, and if you get a mid table and to get to the other side of the board, you've got to run round like 6 other tables to get to your opponent's side. It's just a hassle, and like it's real, and it does like change your mind as to how you're going to deploy and stuff, because you're like, I don't want to deploy over there, even though it might be better for me because I've got to reach all over the table or I've got to run round to your side. Just don't, like if you're doing table rows, don't do short edge deployment. It's just a hassle. No one likes it. Like, and there's like 6 other missions that do long edge deployment, even if it's table quarters, and it's just so much easier. Like it's from a logistics point of view, it's so much easier. Plus, it would eliminate the scouring from the mission pack, and I hate that mission.
Yeah, we had that game too, and me and Simon Laxton were on an end table.
Yeah.
Which as soon as we got there, we both just went, "Thank God we're on the end here." And
I had a middle table, like.
Yeah, I was table 15 directly.
And it was quite funny, the sheer volume of traffic of people coming round and then back.
It's like, Martin, LGT, he doesn't do it, does he? LGT, I don't think he does side to side, does he?
I can't remember. I do remember you had one game where someone hid something behind you and you did go around.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes it happens inadvertently. Like I actually had it in this event. It wasn't on the side to side, it was on mission 3, but against the guard. But because of that aforementioned big plane, he destroyed my Tantalus, and I got my stuff out of the Tantalus onto the objective. So I had like my Carbolite Warriors and my Court of the Archon, and I counted how many models he had touching the objective, and I thought I'm going to leave the same number +1. So then I'm holding that objective to deny him primary. But what I couldn't see, there was another guard like that from my line. I couldn't physically see him. So when it came to like counting primary, I was like, "Oh, I get 12 because I'm holding all 3 of these." And he was like, "No, we're even on this one." I was like, "Oh, like I couldn't see that guy. Like literally couldn't see him." But luckily, Matt being a gent, he was like, "Oh, don't worry about it, because you just put another Urgle there." And we'll say, because I told him I should have said what my intention was, rather than just count it myself in my head. Like if I said, "Look, I want how many guys have you got there?" He should have been honest and said, "I've got 8 guys there." And they go, "Right, okay, so I've got 9 bodies on this, so it's now mine." Like, so that's the kind of thing. But I know at LGT I had a big issue with one of my players where I asked him if there was anything on the objective, and he told me no. So I did my turn, I charged other things, and then when it came to his primary, he says, "Oh, I've got 2 guys on this objective," which was the one I asked him if he had anything on, and he had like 2 like Mechanicus guys on there, but just hid it from me because I couldn't see it because of the buildings. I couldn't see it from my side of the board, and we were in like a middle row. So if I wanted to try and see it, I would have had to run around like 12 tables to get to him to see from his side of the thing. So you sometimes get that, but they're very rare. Like, and really, it's kind of like a case of you just kind of shrug your shoulders and be like, "Okay, fine. Like, if you want to win that way, like, yeah, great, have a go." Like, but
it sounds like you all had a good weekend, some good laughs as well. I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was really good. I think that the meta was quite interesting as well. Like, it was quite diverse, really. I was expecting more Marines. I was actually surprised there wasn't more like Iron Hands and Sallies and I was expecting more Dark Angels, because I know there's quite a lot of players that go to Cross Swords that all seem to have a Dark Angels army, and they've had them for ages. So I was expecting them to rock them out, but only like 2 of them turned up with Dark Angels, and I was like, really? They're really good right now, right? So
I wonder if some of it's a bit of a product of like I talked to Dave Laporta quite a lot, and we were talking about how important it is going into this tournament to be able to kill Marines. And did people hang on? Everybody's tooled up to kill Marines, so I'm not going to bring the thing they're good at killing.
maybe, but I think it's still too early for it's still too early into the game for the counter meta play, if that makes sense. Like, because the meta is going to be developing into like what we assume is going to be heavy Marines, then it will twist a little bit into the things that kill Marines, and then it twists again into the things that kill Marines, and it goes round and round and loops. And so it's kind of, I think in a way, having Marines as the top dog is quite good for non-Marine players as well, because you know what to build for. Like, Marines are always going to be like a very large portion of the player base. So when you go to an event, the odds are you are going to play Marines at least once, if not twice. So if you gear your army into like countering or killing Marines, you're probably going to give yourself a good odds of going into that fight. But then, like, obviously, then you run the risk of going into the skew, which is like something like GSC, or even like Tyranid Horde or Orc Green Tide, where it's like just loads of 1 wounded models with really crappy saves. Then if you're tailoring into Marines, often you don't have the stuff to deal with that. But that's just meta play. Like, you just kind of have to take that gamble. That's just how events are. Like, yeah. But all in all, I think
people are expecting more Marines than are actually there. I mean, I didn't see many Marines there at all.
No,
really. Probably 40 players. There was probably 6 or 7 Marine players there.
It's also like a little bit early, where like so people are probably going to be out buying and speed painting their Stern Guard vets, and it's still a bit early, where there's like certain things in your army that have gone down so much in points that now they're like amazing, but you might not have necessarily had like them before this change. So now everyone's looking, I need 3 units of Stern Guard, for instance, or I need 3 units of Thunderwolf Cavalry for Space Wolves, or that kind of thing, where they might have only had 1 or 2 of those units, but to be like, if they want to do the top meta chasing like army, they have to go out and buy and build and paint, or pay for someone else to build and paint those models for them. That takes time. I mean, that's one of the advantages a player like me has, that I've been playing this game for so long and collecting the same army for so long, that I've got like 3 of everything. So if
reflect into whatever matters out there, whatever comes to you,
whatever comes my way, I can just pick the units that I want to use off the shelf, and I don't have that delay between the meta changing and me having to build and paint stuff anymore. But that's the advantage I have as like an older player, and focusing on just one faction. Whereas like the meta chaser players jump from army to army, and end up with like a lot of armies with very good like armies. But then if that army gets nerfed or some other units get buffed, it takes them time to get those new units into their army. And so because Arcs of Omen is only like a month old, that's not always enough time for people to get the ball rolling on those big sort of top pick units. So I expect like you'll see the meta really start to develop like in mid-March onwards. That's when you'll start seeing like the net listing and like the heavily tailored lists that are min-maxing everything, and that's when you really start to get a feel for it. Right now we're still in a bit of the crazy phase where you just throw things on the board and see how they do. Like my list with the Tantalus, I didn't know how it was going to do. I just wanted to try it out. But like now I've played it, I know that I wouldn't put it in my list unless I was doing it for a laugh. Like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like tip top competitive, it's just good. Like, and I'm sure there's stuff in all of your lists that that you would like drop for something else now that you've played it. Yeah. That's fine.
Faction.
Huh?
Like a whole faction.
Yeah, well, like a whole faction. But that's why you need. That's why you need to get those Vallejo speed paints on. They let you chase those metas.
No,
Marty's got the world record for putting
Sallies.
an alt buggy list together, hasn't he?
Yeah. You playing freebooters this season, Martin?
Oh fuck.
What do you mean? Like, freebooters are great. You can keep your Wazdaka jets off the board until turn 2, and
Hey,
like
David Teague. Remember, I'm one of the few people here who's beat you.
yeah, that's true. John's beating me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've not played Robbie though. I've not played Robbie or you. So
technically, you haven't beaten me, George.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
That's a good spin, Robbie. I like it.
Yeah, undefeated. But yeah,
Cool.
but it's good. It was really interesting for me. It's like the army list and stuff like that. It's really made me realise that the game paradigm has shifted a little bit, and it sounds a bit weird for like to talk about a paradigm shift where you're not talking about the specific codexes that are powerful, but army styles that are powerful. Speed is back in the game.
Yeah.
Like armies that build pressure early, like turn 1, 2 are really good now. Like you need to build that pressure fast and keep it up for as long as you can, because so many armies are really good at scoring now that if you don't pressurize your opponent, he's going to score quicker than you or better or as good. And by the time you get to the late game, where the model count, particularly with things like Marines, where the model count really starts to tell, and if you're behind on score, you're probably going to be behind on models and you're going to lose that game. So you need to, the armies that can build pressure early are going to do really well this edition, particularly with changes things like behind enemy lines and engaging all fronts being very good now. A lot of armies are building into using those. So like with Armor of Contempt gone, the durability of lists has dropped, and the lethality of lists has increased. So you want to be the first one to hit, whether it's through shooting or assault. So as I said, you want to build that pressure early. So that's where the paradigm has gone in the meta, is that the armies that can put pressure on your opponent straight away are very, very good now. So you're looking at like things like Tau and Imperial Guard with their alpha strikes in shooting, and then really fast armies like Ravenwing, White Scars, probably certain Eldar builds like Drakari and Harlequins, I think, are still going to be really good because they can just go. Yeah, honestly, mate, Harlequins gained a lot more than they lost. Like they gained, obviously they lost the four up invul, but the loss of Armor of Contempt is huge for Harlequins because everything's AP 2 or 3. So they pick up Marines easily now, like really easily. They trade up basically all the time. They're super fast, and the Arcs of Omen means you're not paying tax on things like more HQ choices, because you could go into an army and say, I'll have my one Shadow Seer, my Super Death Jester, my Solitaire. Everything else is troops in Star Weavers, like, and you can have, because of the Arcs of Omen, you can have up to 12 troops in Star Weavers. Well, I know you don't have that many for the points, but you have those slots available because Harlequins don't have like loads of elite options or loads of fast attacks options or loads of heavy support options. They have like 6 choices in the whole codex.
Yeah.
So John, and your Harlequins out.
Like they still play the game. They still play the game well. They're just nowhere near as durable as they used to be. So that's just it. It's just whether that's worth it for you. For me, I look at it and I feel like they're where they should be. I never felt like it was good that they had a 4+ invul, because it can really, if you roll 4s, it's really depressing because you're just like, I can't kill these guys. They're like little T3Ls and I can't kill them. Like, and it's just, so the fact that they can be killed now is good for the game, but they hit really hard. They still have all their shenanigans. It's easier for them to get CP because of things like behind enemy lines. You can gain CP for having a troop unit in the deployment zone. They're going to have loads of troop units, so they're going to be gaining like 2 CP every turn to spend on their really good stratagems that let them break the rules of the game. Like, it's yeah, I don't think anyone should underestimate Quins. If you're facing off against a good Quinn list with a player that knows how to use them, they're still going to be very, very good, like in this game. But yeah, that's just me. I'm biased because I like pointy ears.
Cool. Should we wrap it up there? Because it's going on we've got another half an hour.
It's your fault.
But yeah, well done to everyone, and obviously well done Jordan, John coming third and fourth.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, guys.
You all came above Powerhouse Gaming, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
Who?
Exactly. Who, George? Who?
Well, I've got a bet on.
Now. Sorry, Dave. Love you, Dave.
I've got a bet on with Dave that if Bugle finish above Powerhouse, he's got to take me out for dinner. But if Powerhouse finish above us, I've got to take him out for dinner. So.
And how many results?
Oh.
So thank you two for putting me ahead of Dave at this point.
See, now you're playing into the Archon in me, and I might just put myself up to Powerhouse Gaming for a couple of events to bump the points just to screw with you. But, yeah, I'm still umming and ahhing about the next event that me and Simon go to, about putting myself down as Black Crow Gaming just to avoid the turn one, the game one matchup. Like,
Simon's always offered to bribe me for the Bugle Bash because he's most likely coming to that one.
Oh, it's just like every blooming time. It's just cursed because obviously we're always on opposite teams. So when you're going to an event where basically the entire event is made up of 3 teams, like you're probably going to be facing like one of the Black Crow or the Cross Swords gang or the Powerhouse gang. Like it's yeah, but yeah.
So, right, cheers all for coming on and doing it.
No worries.
Is everyone well done, everyone?
You all know what to say. 3, 2, 1.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good job.